All right, boys, let's go.
What's up, everybody? We're back from iCast. I'm Cheech. I got Jimmy Fee here with me. You guys heard from Matt Hafner and Andy. They did an awesome job last week, but we're taking the reins back for another Northeast Offshore report, which is brought to you by SiriusXM Marine. Fish mapping is SiriusXM Marine's most comprehensive plan and is available on your boat's display and includes access on your phone or tablet via the fish mapping app. Serious anglers use every advantage available, and Sirius XM marks the spots where the bait fish gather and the game fish hunt. So you can learn more at SiriusXM.com/fish mapping. Also, Offshore Reports brought to you by Garmin Marine. Check out the Panoptix PS70 stainless steel through-hull transducer. It's powered by Garmin's Rapid Return sonar, which gives you live sonar views at depths at 1,000 feet. Below the surface. Pretty cool. See fish live, catch fish deep, www.garmin.com. And last but not least, we have an awesome report from the Canyon Runner, who you'll hear from a little later with another awesome report. Circling back to iCast, Jimmy, that was kind of an eventful week out in Orlando, huh?
Yeah, it was good. Always good to get down there, see the new tackle, but it does the downside is you come back and it takes a little bit to catch up on the comings and goings of the tuna and other fish that we have out here in the Northeast. So spent the last couple days trying to get a feel for what's been happening.
Doesn't it always feel like you get more when you're not able to participate?
Oh, it's the opportunities always come up. So we flew back. Anybody who traveled over the last week is aware of the complete breakdown, the Microsoft breakdown that happened. I managed to get out relatively unscathed because I went to a wedding in Connecticut. You guys had a brutal flight back where you were about to descend into Providence and the runway lights went out like that. So you rerouted to Boston. Ended up being, about a 12-hour jaunt for you guys to finally get home.
I walked in the door and the last thing Kevin Blinkoff said to me was, "Can you believe that 12 hours ago, we were wrapping up our pure fishing meeting, and it was like the last thing that happened, and all of a sudden it's half a day later and we're walking into a sunrise." It was crazy.
So quick iCast recap in terms of offshore fishing. We saw some pretty interesting stuff. There was a squid version of a Ronzi called a Zippy, ZXIPI. I have no idea.
It's not made by Ronzi.
No. But it's like a squid version of it. They borrow a lot of elements from the Ronzi.
Sure.
Looks like it has a lot of potential as a dead stick bait, jigging offshore. Downside was pretty weak hook. If they could upgrade that hook, I'd have a lot more confidence in it.
The gauge seemed a little thin, but I think it would get the job done.
That was interesting offshore. Rapala putting out a new high-speed trolling bait.
Sarda.
Those lipless baits, the Sarda. Think Wahoo, think Big Eye. That's looking good. Other offshore stuff. The Penn Fathom electric reel. It was a big one. It's a cordless electric reel. Operates on a lithium-ion battery. Think that for tile fish. It's not going to be a swordfish reel, but going to be a great deep dropping reel for tile fish. If you giant fish, use that to deploy your kites. And that actually won Best in Show at the new product showcase. But enough about iCast. We're back here. It is time to go fishing. We both had to turn down, unfortunately, an offshore invite with Captain Larry Backman. He was departing Saturday morning. I was in Connecticut for a wedding. You were...
I was... you can't leave your wife with your two young kids for a whole week of fun at iCast, even though there's a lot of work that gets done, and immediately come home, skip your daughter's 8th birthday, and go to the canyons. As bad as I wanted to, I'm not that dumb.
So ended up being a very good trip.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the canyons in New England a little bit later, but let's go south to north this week. I got reports going all the way down to Ocean City, Maryland, where it seems like in those mid-Atlantic canyons, things are finally starting to improve. We've had a great big eye bite up in the Northeast. Down there, it hasn't been quite so good. I talked to Michelle at Atlantic Tackle in Ocean City, Maryland. That's at Sunset Marina down there. And over the last couple days, there's been a lot of boats coming back with big eye. Guys catching 2 to 4 per trip and fish into the high 100-pound, low 200-pound range. I said, what canyons would have been the hot canyons? And Michelle said, good luck getting that information from the people. We know, of course, we have the in with Adam and the Canyon Runner crew. They're going to give us some insight as to the best canyons there. But there's a lot of tournaments coming up, so those guys are keeping things pretty tight to the vest. There's also, I saw they've been weighing in some Wahoo, which has been kind of missing from a lot of our reports so far this year, and yellowfin fishing has been pretty decent.
I'm going to jump in since my social get of the week comes from down in that area from Poor Man's Canyon. I saw an awesome post. It was one of those that was like, man, I wish I was on that trip. It looked awesome. It came from Cliff Grunstra, and he was posting on Northeast Offshore Pelagic Reports, which has become kind of my weekly favorite. There's a lot of good reports coming in from that page on Facebook, and he says, a fun couple days this past week out in the deep. Went 1 for 4 on wahoo, 1 for 4 on tuna, and 2 for 4 on mahi trolling at Poor Man's Canyon. If you don't know where that is pretty much smack dab between the Baltimore Canyon and Washington Canyon. And he was able to get out on Monday and then again on Saturday. He said, wish we were able to get a few more to the boat, but that's fishing. Sure can't complain about the company or the delicious fresh fish this week. They are out there. What I loved about his report is it had everything. It had his kids or his friends' kids were on board, and they looked like they were having a blast. The quality of the fish were good. It was a solid yellowfin, beautiful wahoo, and they made the most of it because he included a bunch of food pictures, which I'm a big fan of. That looked like I wish I was on his invite list. I was impressed, and I love to cook, and you'll see that in the comments, or not in the comments. You'll see that on the screen. With his report. So thanks for sharing, Cliff Grunstra.
Yeah, that's man. I am hoping we can get another shot to get out of the canyons like that. Andy had a great trip. We're going to get to that in a minute. But up to New Jersey, I talked with Jack at Fisherman Supply Company, great offshore tackle shop right there in Point Pleasant, New Jersey. And sounds like, depending on how far you want to run, you're going to see kind of some different tuna. There's a lot of tuna opportunities off New Jersey, from inshore waters like closer to shore places like Little Italy.
Homeland, Little Italy.
Yeah, there you go. And that's 60 to 90 inch bluefin there. So some bigger bluefin in closer, jigs and poppers, and on the troll. If you go a little bit further out, you're going to see more but smaller recreational sized tuna. Places like the Atlantic Princess Wreck and the Razor Wreck. And that's, again, troll and jig. That was the spot where you had a really great yellowfin bite probably about 2 weeks ago. Some really big yellowfin taken there. And it sounds like the yellowfin have kind of thinned out, almost as if they're heading out to the canyons, because there have been a ton of yellowfin in Hudson Canyon, according to Jack. He said that it's been mostly a troll if you're in the deep. There's plenty of yellowfin, a few big eye. He said if you go up on the flats, the yellowfin are thick enough at times you can drop a jig and do very well with jigs. He recommended 120 to 150 gram jigs in the pink glow size. And in terms of billfish, he said he hasn't heard a ton about billfish, except for there was one kind of an exceptional catch where somebody, I think 20 miles out of Manasquan Inlet, had a white marlin hit a popper. And that's the second accidental white marlin, not accidental, but kind of incidental white marlin that somebody caught. While going out for tuna, looking for tuna, saw a marlin, pitched something to it, and had kind of a.
Why can't that be me?
Maybe it will be.
What is it about, checking the box on a new species? I haven't caught a white marlin yet. Messed around with a couple of them, but what is it about wanting to do it in the coolest way possible, or else it's not as sweet?
We're in that same boat with swordfish. Yeah. We are both swordfish lists over our lives, but I don't want it daytime deep dropping. And in that way, I'm very much a choosy beggar because I haven't caught one. But I want to catch it at night. I want to be holding the rod. I want to feel it. I want to have to crank. So it might never happen. Yeah. If you want to get a swordfish, it seems like those guys that have the deep drop thing dialed in, which I'm not taking anything away from it. You have to be super dialed. Your gear's got to be perfect. You have to know the spots, the baits. You have to have your stuff dialed in. The one thing lacking is having that rod in your hands and feeling that fight. But no, I know what you mean.
It's kind of funny.
On to Long Island. Talked to Hilton at Whitewater Outfitters. He said there's he kind of echoed the good yellowfin fishing just inside the canyon. So whereas you have some good yellowfin on the edge, inside the canyon, up on the flats, there's some big schools of them, and you can get them on jigs and, of course, on the troll. Closer to shore, he said the bunker have charged back in. I guess they got thin for a couple weeks off the south shore of Long Island, or thin for a few days. They've charged back in. They brought the giant tuna with them, and there's a pretty steady bite of anglers going out of Long Island ports and catching and releasing giant bluefin tuna. There's a decent recreational bluefin fishing at some of their midshore spots there. I think Coimbra, places like that, and that's been on the troll and some action on jig and pop as well.
I just got a live update from the tri-state from Friendly and Brian Weiss. His buddy is out there on the boat, the Freddie Joe, and they just weighed in what is currently, up until this update, things change in real time, but currently the top ranked big eye at 246 pounds. So stud big eye there for the Freddie Joe, and Taylor was on the rod for that one. That just came through on the text line.
Look at that. I have
Figured
that
I'd
in my
update you
notes
guys.
as well, dude. Yeah, so that tournament happens out of Block Island every year. Began on Monday, the 22nd. It's going to last until the 25th, which is Thursday. And in addition to that 246-pound big eye, which was Freddie Joe at the top of the tuna list, you've had 4 other big eye so far between 160 and 220 pounds. 246 is a tough mark to beat.
Yeah,
and
it's a solid one.
Our friend and my neighbor Nick Haney, he mates for a boat Opportunity, and they are the ones
They're
that
on
caught.
a 2-year tear.
So they caught the biggest big eye in the Oak Bluffs Blue Water Classic at 235 pounds. And I was talking to Nick a little bit about the tournament scene. I'm like, how he said he likes it better when the fishing's tougher when it comes to tuna. He said that if you're focusing on tuna,
It's just a lottery ticket, you know.
if the fishing's really good, it could be anybody that gets the biggest bite. But when it's tougher, it's going to take the captains and crews who are really dialed in, who know how to scratch, kind of scrounge and scratch up a bite. Those are the ones that have the better shot of winning. So they ended up with a 235-pound big eye, put them at the top of the leaderboard, and pretty good payday for the crew there.
Absolutely.
So 246. Judging by what the other tournament winners have been, even though you caught it early on, that should put them in a pretty good place. There's been yellowfin 110 pounds caught in the tri-state so far.
Wow.
But no wahoo, no billfish, and no longfin tuna yet. We were seeing some longfin albacore a little bit earlier in the season.
Get me excited because it's another species that I haven't encountered on the in the deep. That it seems like a cool, the cool thing to check out.
The coolest part about the longfin is when they're there, when you find them. They're the type of fish that will cover up the spread. That's been my experience with them. I've caught a fair amount of them, not only on party boats, but also on private boats out in the canyons. And when you get them, it's like you get a lot of them.
I feel like it would be cool once, because then after you've caught them and you've done that whole thing, it's kind of like, all right, they're probably preventing me for catching a big eye or some yellowfin, because they do roll pretty deep.
And they've got a different body shape. They're kind of more compact, where they're goofy looking. They call them penguins, is like the nickname for them. They've got those long fins. I caught one on a Ron Z once, which was pretty cool. I was out. It was a head boat trip that. Well,
we don't have to go there, Jim.
Yeah, we're not going to go on that fateful trip. But saying no billfish in the Tri-State Canyon shootout so far, going back to Atlantic City where there were a lot of billfish caught. So I don't know if it's just that the New England canyons where these guys are fishing now, you're seeing less white marlin and they're more loaded up in those mid-Atlantic canyons that these boats were fishing. Jimmy Johnson Quest for the Ring wrapped up on the 20th, and they could fish out of Ocean City, Maryland or Atlantic City, New Jersey. Over the course of that tournament, there were 100-plus white marlin caught, 11 blue marlin, and I think the total tuna combined big eye and yellowfin was only about 36.
It's funny how things flip-flop like that. It's either a tuna bite or a marlin bite.
Now, part of that could be, too, is that's a tournament that puts a lot of emphasis on billfish releases. So the boat that won had 2,519 points, which was the result of 14 white marlin and a blue marlin caught. So if you want to get the points and get the big money for that one, you have to focus on your billfish releases. So maybe people weren't looking so much for the tuna, but it would also fit with what what Michelle down in Ocean City, Maryland said, where the tuna fishing is just starting to pick up. So it's just starting to really ramp up in those mid-Atlantic canyons.
So you get release points for billfish, but I saw some tank blue marlin getting winched up on the crane.
Yeah, I think they were marlin up to 650 pounds.
Yeah, something like that. On the Water Zone, Robin Minicino, who covers that event, in person, sent me a video of what it blows your mind when you see the perspective of how big that marlin's tail is. Like a big blue marlin, it's just massive. It's crazy.
They are pretty unbelievable fish. I've loved them from afar on several different trips now.
It's one that I do have under my belt, but the funniest part is I traveled the world looking for one kind of. I went to Kona, Costa Rica, St. Lucia, a couple other tropical climates, and I ended up catching one right out of my own yard port here, which was a quality fish.
Speaks
awesome.
to the power of the Northeast Canyons. There's nowhere else I would rather kind of call home than right here in the Northeast. But I'm going to kick it to you. You might have gotten more details out of Andy than I did. All I heard was that
I
they
actually
stuffed the box with yellowfin.
I did get. I got something in the fridge from Andy too, which I'm not complaining about.
Oh, you got the swordfish steaks.
Yeah, a little
none of
something.
those.
It was more. We'll say it's more kebab-like.
I'm further down on the list of gimme gimmes for.
You got the bill.
Yeah, I got the fin. I got the pectoral fin.
Yeah, he got out with on the skipjack with Captain Larry, as Jimmy mentioned. Unfortunately, we couldn't make that one, but he said it was a bit of a grind, and it's been a theme that's come out of the Canyon Runners, camp. Pretty much every report where it's like, guys, the traffic shuts it down. It's kind of funny because part of their whole thing is getting you clued into that 400 plus boat network. But it does create traffic where when a bite pops off, where you have to you kind of have to be reactive, read and react. Once it gets really busy, it's like you got to know what's going to follow. It's going to shut down the bite, and you got to be a little bit resourceful. And Captain Larry Backman and the crew on the skipjack did just that. They dealt with heavy pressure. A lot of guys complaining on the radio. It was a grind, and they decided to kind of go back to the playbook and look, and they looked at which way the water seemed to be moving. They broke out from the crowd, and immediately they were rewarded with plenty of yellowfin bites. Not big fish, 30 to 45 pounds, but, they taste just as good as the bigger ones. They got about a dozen bites. They got 6 in the box, and then they set up for some day dropping, did a little tile fishing, tried to look for their sword, and then as night came, I'm sure that knowing Larry's program, he got up on the troll into dark and then set up on the sword grounds and basically aimed to drift across the canyon. Did a whole drift. Andy said, I've never seen so little life in the lights. He said he saw one flying fish, and that was pretty much it for life in the lights. They went back and set back up, did another drift, obviously kind of took a different path, and around 3 in the morning, Andy was the only one up, and he heard the tick, 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 tick of the drag. Now, at night, they fish, I want to say a 3-rod spread, if I remember correctly.
When we did it with him. He fished 3 rods. He's
From
got
deep to shallow. First rod was set at 250, Andy said, then 150, and then they had one kind of floater, like in the top 50 feet of the water column. The one that got bit was the middle one at 150 feet, probably right near the thermocline, if I was to guess, having not been there. But he heard that. He walked over to it, and about a couple minutes later, tick, 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 tick again, went silent. He bumped the drag up just a hair, and he heard the drag again. And he's like, all right, nobody's here to watch me screw this up. So he just started hammering the reel, came tight on the fish, ended up being an 80-pound swordfish that they got to put in the box and bring home, which I can't wait to get a taste of later. But, when everybody else kind of dealt with that traffic, they had some action, and it was highlighted by the end of the trip with the man in the blue suit showing up. And it whacked like 2 baits in the spread, then went down and ate the Nomad deep diver, and then just took a half a mile of line.
The blue marlin ate the deep diver?
Ate the Nomad. That's the second one that I've seen eat the Nomad. I'm assuming it was probably the pink one that Larry likes to fish. Kevin Gould also had a blue marlin on a pink Nomad DTX, I think last year or the year prior, but thing peeled off a half mile of line, and the angler kind of gave up on it because he's like, oh, it came off. And then Larry always going and checking the situation out, walks over, and then Andy said he just saw Larry's head go like this, and the line's just shooting up in front of the boat. Big marlin comes out of the water and jumped it off, and that was the end of their blue marlin expedition or battle.
Pretty
cool
to
see,
get them
though.
to the jump, man. It is awesome, especially if you're not don't have to take it back to the scales for a tournament. If you get to the jump, get a good look at it. It's That's
definitely pretty
awesome.
Cool. So I checked in going up the coast.
They moved. They went easter. They went to more.
We were
east.
fishing the hydro area.
Yep.
I mean, you'll be breaking that down in a little bit here.
Should we kick it to the Canyon Runner report right now?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's have them fill in the the rest of the Canyon report is a good one. So enjoy that, and we'll be back with the rest of the report shortly after the Canyon Runner does their thing.
All right, Jimmy and Cheech, how we doing this week? I want to start off this call with a quick touch on weather. One of the things we do a lot with our map here in our virtual captain system and our members is a touch on the weather. And it's a unique thing's been happening all season, kind of like the middle of June. Made a note that there's the biggest high pressure system I've ever seen in 42 years of running offshore sitting over the Atlantic. Look at it. It's the size of the Atlantic and it hasn't moved. So one thing we've been struggling with all year is this constant, persistent southwest wind that has kept all our folks not fishing. I mean, for all of our members and all of our charter boats and pro staff from basically down the Carolinas, Ocean City, right through New Jersey, Long Island, it's been the worst season in 30 years of trying to get offshore, and it's because of this persistent high pressure system, and it's still there. And we're just dealing with it. We had nice 4 days of good weather, which we're going to go over in a second, where we had some good fishing. But this coming week, this system's in place, and it's going to be some tough weather again. But anyone wonder why it's been so tough to get out? That's why, that high. Now let's zoom in and see what was going on. So what we have here is the tracks of our boats. It's just a 3-day period from the 18th to the 21st. There was a lot of fishing that we got in. Looking at our satellite map and our 30 fathom line, why don't we start with the canyons? What happened this week? Well, there's a couple major tournaments. There's tournaments going on right now. The big one, the Montauk Canyon Challenge, Jimmy Johnson down here. We had Captain Dean Lambros of Canyon Runner and a few other boats out here fishing hydro. Boats that weren't in the tournament fished out in this direction. Captain Dean had 14 big eyes on a trip and about 20 yellowfin. There's another boat in here in hydro did even better with big eyes. These big eyes were basically 90 to 140 pounds, but there was a couple tournament winners pulled out of here. FYI, the boats you see on this map right now are all fishing on Monday morning. The water that was here slid to the west, and now you're going to see all the boats sitting up here in Beach. There was no water in between these two places, and if you look at there was this block right here where there was no water between Beach and all the way to the west to the dip. So do you see here, this was 4 days of fishing. There was no one in this block. It's because the water wasn't there. But there was good fishing in Beach the end of the weekend. There was good fishing in hydro Thursday, Friday. As we moved to the west, again, there was no good water here. You could see it on the water temperature charts. So boats fished the dip. A couple boats fished the tails. A couple boats did fish out here. They didn't do well. The dip had halfway decent fishing because that eddy, here's the eddy. This time of year, folks, we don't look at water temperature, we look at chlorophyll. And the way our charts work is we're not trying to make composite charts and make stuff up. This is the actual picture from the satellite. There's a lot of cloud cover, but when you're watching these every day, you don't need every picture. We know that there's eddy about the size of this. We know that the edge of it's right about here. The boats that were in the dip didn't do well. What happened as you got further west, on Thursday, the Canyon Runner went offshore. We were one of the first boats out. We just figured we were going to start our trip at the tip of the Hudson, and we troll and work our way down the 100 square where everyone spends all their time. Well, we didn't troll like 100 yards, and we got 6 on. One was a big eye. We lost it. Caught about 4 yellowfins, turned around, got 3 more on, and they were all 200 to 260 pound big eyes right at the tip of the Hudson. So then what we told everyone who was fishing the Jimmy Johnson, in 40 years of fishing the Hudson, and we're catching maybe 600 big eyes. I don't think we caught more than 10 in the tip of the Hudson. Very odd for it to repeat. Well, don't you know it? The next day on Friday, a bunch of the boats in the Jimmy Johnson came up here. There were 10 big eyes caught from the tip of the Hudson down to the Bombs, which is an area right here. And if you want to take through all the boats, you can see this is a track of where the Canyon Runner was. This is a better picture of the Hudson. And all the action was up here in the tip. Very unusual. So when Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the Hudson was just loaded with boats. And the nice thing about it was, even though you had about 70 boats there every day, right now on Monday, there's still about 30. Pretty much everybody caught anywhere from 3 to 14, 15 yellowfin. The big eyes, though, shut off. There's only been about 1 big eye each day, Saturday and Sunday. As we move down the line, if you go back to the water temperature, you can see the blue water starting to push down here. Here's one edge of it. Here's clouds. It comes like this way, right? So you had the toms with fish. You had the Lincoln with some fish. But then there's no water. So the water ends. So what happened as you came south? No water, very, very bad yellowfin fishing. But big eyes don't necessarily need good water. Why? Because they spend like 80% of their lives down 600, 800 feet anyway. They're not always tied to the water. So what we had here was every other day there'd be a big eye bite in the Wilmington. You can see everyone's filling into, that's the big eye notch in the Wilmington. You can see all the boats were in here. Well, we had members with 2, we had a boat with 5. Kind of every other day there was a bite. Not much out of the Baltimore, but everyone just goes to the Baltimore anyway. I don't think there was more than a big eye or 2 pulled out of here and a couple of yellowfins. As you came down the line, every day you get 1 or 2 boats with a few yellowfins, but it's very, very slow fishing here. I mean, very slow fishing. On Saturday, every single one of the top charter boats out of Ocean City didn't even get a bite. But what happened again? On Saturday, later in the afternoon, there was about 5 boats sitting in the Washington. They all got big eye bites. So now let's work our way inshore. And what was really interesting, we're going to go back to the water. And what we look at again this time of year is just blue water. So all of a sudden, we saw this. We talked about it on a strategy call Thursday. One of our guys listened to us. This blue water, for some reason now, is pushing up inshore. This is the 30 fathom line. The blue water pushed up inside it. And this is an area called Lumpy Bottom. And one boat went there on Friday and had kind of the best yellowfin fishing that they've had down there. He trolled about 12 fish, plus false albacore in short order. Unfortunately, the word got out. The next day it was kind of slow, but there's definitely fish down here. And if with any luck, if this blue water keeps pushing north, and this is very normal, it comes from north and pushes all the way up, it hopefully comes into the Hot Dog. Some places a little closer, Massey, so that the guys from South Jersey can get there. But right now, that's all there kind of is down this way. As we move our way up the line, what we saw, we'll go back to this map, what we saw was some consistent fishing very close to the beach. And you can see the map, it's just loaded with dots in here. So let's get these dots off here. There is a place called the 56-mile wreck, the Atlantic Princess. Oh, here's the 56-mile wreck. We have the Atlantic Princess here. All in this area was really good fishing Thursday and Friday. Even Saturday was halfway decent, but we had 100 boats there Saturday. It slowed it down. But Thursday and Friday, boats jigged anywhere from 5 to 20 bluefins in this area. And then as we worked our way inshore, we have Little Italy. This is the Humpty Dumpty, Little Italy, the Lillian, this little triangle right here. What's going on here is a very interesting first light, gray light, basically before the sun comes over the horizon. Giant tuna bite on jig, 65-inch to 80-inch fish. Guys who are really good at doing this are getting in there. I mean, really 80-90% of these bites come before the moon's over, before the sun is over the horizon. And it's been pretty consistent for almost a week. Just offshore of a little, every once in a while, you get the schoolies. Unfortunately, as we work our way up and out, we don't have much going on until we get to Tuna Ridge. So unfortunately, you have there's giants all in here, Cartwright, CIA, there's a lot of giants being caught. A couple days last week, if you had 20 boats fishing, 10 boats were catching fish. But what did happen, finally, when the wind let up, boats were out here on Tuna Ridge Friday, and it wasn't crowded, and they caught. And they caught pretty well, anywhere from 3 to 6 bluefins, and there's yellowfins in here. If you take this, you can see this is just yesterday, but just a handful of members were out there. This is today. There's 2 boats there. There's maybe 5 there yesterday, 5 there on Saturday with 100 boats. And there's 100 boats there on a Monday when we're recording this. There's just too many boats with too little fish. But there's yellowfins in here, and there's bluefins in here. And the squid have showed up in here. You got this dragger starting to drag squid in here. We had boats coming home from offshore in the canyon, and they saw fish in on the dumps. They already fished for a 30-hour overnighter. They didn't spend any time. But here's the dump area. There's fish in here. That's why this boat stopped here and looked. The fish are going to show up. We need some guys to put in effort. They will. Unfortunately, our pro staff out in Nantucket, John Galvin's reporting very slow fishing. And we keep hearing very slow fishing on all the spots east of Chatham, east of Nantucket. It just isn't very good, except, of course, the giant tuna fishing has been outstanding. As for that, folks, that's kind of a summary of it all. We look forward to a little bit more of that wind in the middle of this week, but hopefully by Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we have more great reports coming in, and we'll be able to give you an update next week. Thanks, folks. Hope all's well. Take care, guys.
The Canyon Runner Sport Fishing Team is here to help you catch fish, as you saw from that report. They offer coaching, concierge services, seminars, and that virtual captain system that you just got a preview of that helps you connect with more than 400 other member boats and 15 pro staffers in real time to see where they're fishing, how they're doing. It is like having the best network out there on the offshore grounds. You can check them out for yourself at www.canyonrunner.com. And Cheech, from this week's report, there were 2 big the two things that really stuck out to me were, one, that high pressure system over the Atlantic. I think that for two or 3 weeks in a row, you're like, yeah, there's something that's happening with the weather, and I know, but I can't remember. He explained it. There's been a high pressure system sitting out. It's like it's almost the size of the Atlantic. He says he's never seen that in all his years of running off this.
It's crazy.
And that's what's created this cycle of southwest winds. It's just making our weather windows so narrow, and has been kind of the bane of the offshore captain's existence over the last couple months. The other one was how he said at this time of year, he switches over from worrying about the water temperature and the water temperature breaks to looking at the chlorophyll, which is also the plankton. That's one of the features that you can pull up on your SiriusXM fish mapping app. And interestingly enough, I'm looking at today's date, July 23rd, pulling that up and seeing, I've got two things pulled up right now. I have the sea surface temperature, contour lines there, and I also have the plankton concentrations. So to explain why that's important, why is plankton an important thing to worry about when you're heading offshore, it's the primary food source for the bait fish. Going down to either the phytoplankton, which is the plant material, or the zooplankton, which is the microscopic animals. It attracts the bait fish, and when you have concentrations of plankton, especially over a vast area of the canyons, Andy talked about not seeing very many bait fish in the canyons. Maybe they were in an area that was not very productive that way. But all those the plankton attracts the bait fish attract the game fish. It is the life attracts life principle. And one of the features on the fish mapping app is plankton fronts and plankton concentrations. So right now I've got plankton concentrations pulled up, and I'm seeing a pretty decent one over hydro right now. That's also right around, probably one of the best temperature breaks that we see in any of the canyons right now. You've got kind of flat, hot water throughout a lot of the southern mid-Atlantic canyons from the Hudson on down, and that's why Captain Adams says that he wants he looks at the chlorophyll this time of year, the plankton, because you get fewer, once the water gets to a certain level, you get kind of that flat, hot, dead water. So you need to look to other things that are going to concentrate that life.
I'm following along. I'm looking at the same.
We ran into this, one of our 3-hour tours when we went canyon fishing and didn't catch anything a few years ago. We were out there, and it was just like straight 78-degree water for hundreds of miles in any direction. And that's when you get to that time of year where you're almost hoping for a little tropical storm or something to break that up. Put some temperature breaks back in it. But if you don't have that, you want to look for that chlorophyll, that plankton that's going to concentrate the life. But you do have some decent temperature contours toward the eastern canyons if you have the range to get out there. Hydrographers is probably one of the further east ones that's reachable for most boats. Once you get to oceanographers and beyond that, all the way out to Munson, you're looking at like a head boat or like the Helen H. I know will run pretty far east of those canyons, or a boat that's going to be out there for multiple days. I know one boat last year fished Munson late in the season, which and had like a tremendous. I think they caught something like 14 to 20 big eye. Pretty amazing trip if you have the range to make it. But right now, if you're looking at it for this week, when the weather looks good, hydro looks like the spot to me. Now, so in addition to that, while in the Hudson Canyon, where we heard there were lots of good fishing for yellowfin with a few big eye, especially off the tip, up on the flats, if you look at strictly the water temperatures, the sea surface temperatures, not a very sexy picture right there. Just kind of 77 to 79 degree water, not a great break. But when you pull up either the plankton concentrations or the plankton fronts, which the plankton fronts they indicate areas with a higher likelihood of game fish feeding activity. And that's in locations where you have the plankton and the temperature, where those fronts kind of coincide. That's kind of the perfect storm for
I mean, the plankton front, they usually report it in very strong, moderate, or whatever, and that basically indicates an area where the edge of that front, there's a strong concentration of plankton, and then the water that it's pushing up against, it doesn't have much at all. So it kind of gives you one of those seams that, would be like a break on the plankton front side of things, right?
Yeah.
And you want to look for areas where that coincides with, a strong temperature break, or, a convergence zone, things that are going to make that edge really kind of have, kind of like dead water where there's a wall of life water, like lively water or nutrient-rich water pushing up against it, and that's what's going to concentrate fish on that seam.
So the tip of the Hudson is looking like the other likely spot for this week.
Kicking it up the coast, I talked to Connor from Monahan's Marine, and he said Stellwagen has started to pick up, with the exception of Middle Bank. Peaked Hill to Nauset has been pretty good. It's been kind of a drift bite, drifting max. I'm sure guys that are putting around Z out dead stick to getting it done too. They've caught giants off of Nauset, trolling bars and shoots. He said that some guys were employing shoots on planers, which have done very well in combination with bars. And he went for a cruise on Sunday and marked a couple wolf packs of fish in like 70 feet right off of Scituate. He said they were too big to be stripers. They definitely were tuna marks. And
well, I know Captain Brian Coombs got into some. Got to a giant off. Off Boston
absolutely. Harbor. I heard from Captain Bob from Seacoast, New Hampshire Sport Fishing. He said the pogie schools have settled in the North Rye coast, occasionally just across the river to Maine. And no school tuna blitzes in the last few days, but it does seem like a matter of time there. Does not seem to be any consistency to those bites with the school bluefin. He said, guess one just bides time releasing 50-inch striped bass with a heavy rig at the ready for the tuna. I know that Brian Coombs, from his report, which I'll get to, wishes he had that heavier tuna rod with him, but he said commercial-sized fish continues to be a pick bite. Amidst the whales on northeast Scantum was good for several days, and then it faded. And similarly, the curl has given up fish, but a pick bite mostly on bridled groundfish down deep over there. Yesterday at Pigeon Hill, he repeatedly marked solid fish cutting through schools of 8-inch cod in 140 feet of water, but could not get bit. And then mid-afternoon, that pot of wreck fish he was looking for exploded on spike mackerel around the boat. Short fight on a siren before pulling the hook, and he plans to spend more time there soon. So a great full Monty from Captain Bob from Seacoast, New Hampshire Sport Fishing. Another charter captain, Brian Coombs, was striper fishing for trophy-sized striped bass, and he had a lot of big stripers on top water plugs when a lobsterman buddy hailed him on the radio and said, "Get here right now, there's tuna everywhere." So he had about a 5-mile run from the area he was fishing. He had no tuna gear on the boat. Grabbed his 2 heaviest bass, outfits, and flipped around the Seaguar to put some heavier stuff on the leaders, and then he found a full-out feed of 70-inch to 100-inch tuna ripping through a school of bunker. They had pinned the tuna had the bunker pinned to the surface. The bunker school was the size of an Olympic-sized swimming pool, he said, and one of his patrons, A.J. Lynch, launched a bullet right into that feed, came tight within 10 cranks on a Gags whippet fish.
Oh man, okay.
Yeah.
So he's using full striper gear.
He literally had only bass gear with him. He literally brought a knife to a gunfight. I want to say it was a 5K reel. They hooked the wrong one. They stayed tight to it for about 50 minutes, and then they were doing the whole merry-go-round of fresh arms every 5 minutes on the rod. And they just try to, put the boots to the fish the best they could. And then around 50-minute mark, a little lapse in communication, and it was gone as quick as it was on. So he got a good kick out of that. They had some excitement to add to their trophy striper trip. But from a lot of people, the tuna fishing isn't too far the further north you get. I talked to Joe from Fisherman's Outfitter in Gloucester, and he said Stellwagen and Jeffries has been consistent with commercial fish. Improving. It's been improving. It's on the uptick, he said. 80 to 110-inch fish. It's hit or miss on the pogie schools right now. It's kind of a right place, right time bite, he said. Lots of schools have been holding deep, the pogies, mind you. And then you'll get excited when you see some surface activity, something's pushing them to the top, and then you'll be let down when you're ready. It's a small humpback or something. But every now and again, you see bluefin crashing those. He said boats departing from Newburyport, Gloucester, Essex, Ipswich Bay area, running towards Jeffries, are running across that 120-foot line or over the rock pile, and have pulled up short after encountering tuna harassing those pogie schools. So, head on a swivel, be looking in all directions. That can happen pretty quick, and it can go away as soon as, shortly after it started. Southern Jeffries have had plenty of people trolling. A couple kids that come into the shop said that they were trolling mixed 13-inch bars, 19-inch bars, meaning the squid size. They hooked 2 wreckfish on the southern end of Jeffries. They weren't able to seal the deal, though. A couple things went wrong for those guys, and that was that.
So it sounds like definitely a better year than the last couple years when you get to northern New England, north of Cape Cod. Now we are seeing some improvement south of the Vineyard and south of Block Island, where I know boats are going out there and jigging and hooking into some fun-sized bluefin tuna with the occasional giant mixed in. I know my friend Kyle Kennedy was out there a couple days ago. He hooked into a giant, and they fought it for a while, ended up losing it. And then Captain Joe DiOrio, got out on the tuna grounds, I think either yesterday or Sunday, either Monday or Sunday, and he said it was slow. It was a slower day, is how he described it. They were catching. They caught 2 fish, and he said there were a lot of boats that went home with no fish.
Yeah.
But they were able to get 2. They looked like they were kind of in the 40 to 45 inch range. So,
I
smaller
sent
size.
an on-the-water friendly to that area, the Tuna Ridge area, and basically called me. He's never fished this area. He's done the live bait, North Shore, New Hampshire stretch thing. The fishing's different down south of the Vineyard. Is obviously the same tactics work, but he's like, what's the playbook for being flexible and versatile out there? And I took him through the minimalistic trolling approach to the Ronzi and to the vertical jigging, and then have a stick bait and a paddle tail and a popper, and they got it done. They found fish at the second spot that I kind of gave them a little tour, point by point. I said I would look for life here and slow down when it happens, and then they settled in at the second spot because they liked what they saw. They hooked a fish, didn't get it done, ended up sticking around longer than they should have, and came home empty-handed, but he was pumped to have hooked a fish. It did eat a Ronzi dead sticked. And they're chomping at the bit to get out. So, like you just reported with DiOrio, it's been kind of hit or miss. I've heard some boats do really well in that south of Block range, and it seems to be kind of shifting to that jig bite, which we love, which typically is followed by random, surface feeds that you can get poppers into and have some fun with jigging and popping. Well, hopefully there'll be some good weather around the corner. The end of this week looks like there's some opportunities to get out.
Yeah, it's looking at the marine forecast. We've got some bigger seas, but the wind looks okay.
The spacing looks okay. I saw those swells. I mean,
it looks like if you've got
the spacing of the wave height, so
a larger boat, you should be all right. Yeah. No problem. For the small boats, you may want to stay inshore over the next couple of days, but things are on the upswing for sure, and the canyons continue to be the place to be. Inshore, we're seeing some more signs of life.
There's an uptick there. That momentum should materialize into the best has yet to come on the inshore side of things. And hopefully the canyons stay hot right along with it, because I'm dying to get inshore canyons anywhere.
Our boss was talking a big game of getting the on-the-water boat out to the canyons. When we got back from ICAST, we got to go hold his feet to the fire on that one and get ourselves out there on one of our own vessels here. But thank you for tuning into this one. We'll be back next Wednesday with a new offshore report, and we'll see you then.
Thank you very much. Keep us up to date with your latest offshore adventures. We want to hear from you, and thanks again for tuning in.